Hey guys, it's Sam here. Just very quickly before we start, Guillaume and I have partnered up with Automation Boutique to write a brand new ebook for you guys called Going Beyond the Buzzwords. It's an amazing ebook that goes through all the things about automation, data, and processing that just simplifies the topics just in the way that we do all the time in Corporate Treasury 101. To pick up your copy, just go into the show notes and click on the link, or go to the website and find the partners page where we have a link to the ebook there as well with Automation Boutique. And then here's the episode.
Welcome to the Corporate Treasury 101 podcast. This is the third and final part of our full interview with Royston Da Costa, where we discuss Treasury Dragons. In the episode of today, expect to learn what are Treasury Dragons, how to get involved there and how did it happen, what has been the most interesting thing from vendors that open someone's eyes to how the space is progressing, what are the common mistakes vendors are making, and like always, much more. Royston has been absolutely lovely and definitely knows a lot about treasury technology and cybersecurity. As a member of the Treasury Dragons, that was to be expected. We hope you will enjoy the episode. If that is the case, and when you're thinking about how you found our podcast, chances are that it was through word of mouth, social media, or a recommendation from your favorite podcast platform. And this is our only request to you. The best way you can support the podcast is to head to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Corporate Treasury 101. That will mean the world to us and help more people learn about Treasury. And with all that being said, please welcome Royston Da Costa.
So Royston, I want to switch over to another passion of yours, something outside of all the amazing work you're doing at Ferguson with cloud-based systems and whatnot and cybersecurity. The Treasury Dragons, which sounds very, very cool. Could you talk us through what that is and kind of how you got involved in it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, it's coming up to 2 years, I think, in terms of being a Treasury Dragon. I was first invited by Mike Hewitt and David Kellin to participate at the Dragon. So essentially, it's a panel of four of us on there. So David Kellin is the lead Dragon. He's an ex-treasurer, but now he's got his own consultant.
Interim treasuring. We partner with David on quite a lot of things
great
already, actually.
Yeah. And
he was a trainer on our course in London, our treasury crash course in London.
Yes, I remember seeing something around that. And then obviously there's Kira Keelan, who is also a treasurer for startup based in the US. And you've got Andy Gifford, who's an ex-treasurer, but he now has his own consultancy. And there's myself at Ferguson. But the general kind of format's very similar to, if you know, the kind of like the Dragon's Den, or I think it's
by British show.
Den, or
for our US listeners.
Yeah,
it's a very British. It's like Shark Tank.
Yeah, Shark Tank. That's it. And the only difference is we're not putting up our own money here, and it's not as well because of that reason. I guess it doesn't have to be that ruthless, but we do put the. Or at least Mike's very good. Mike, who's the kind of the moderator, puts the vendors through their paces. They have literally 7 minutes to present and 3 minutes Q&A. But what's so great about this, and bear in mind, this was started before the pandemic. So certainly through the pandemic, it's a great sort of opportunity for anyone. It still is, frankly, for anyone who doesn't want to necessarily engage with a vendor directly, to kind of have a bit of, to conduct a bit of window shopping, quite kind of in a relaxed way. So yeah, and obviously as one of the Dragons, I get this first-hand
unique opportunity,
what they have to say, and also to ask questions. So definitely very excited. Also excited about the how they've evolved. The solutions, the various solutions, because they're not. There's probably a fair number of kind of very popular recurring solutions that come up, and you can see how they kind of change or how they progress from time to time.
Super cool. So the concept is you're these four dragons that are evaluating these vendors that are coming on, similar to Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, these kind of style of shows, but for Treasury. So it sounds super cool. And you got evolved through all that. What's the Like, have you seen what's the interesting stuff that's come across
Yeah.
the show? Has there been any solutions specifically that you were like, wow, that's, and again, we don't mind as long as they're good and you would say genuinely you like them and you're not trying to sell something. I'm definitely interested just to know, and feel free to name drop.
Yeah, I mean, do find though in the industry the same names come up from time to time
Yeah.
because they just the way the solutions work. So I thought we had a session on cash pooling a couple of months ago, and I think I think there was three vendors in that case that presented. Cooper was one of them, which is the system we use, Iron Treasury, and Cobase. And I thought that was one of the best sessions I was able to preside over as a dragon. I mean, to be honest with you, the standards are so high anyway. So, you asked me to pick one. That's kind of one that, and cash pooling is a very hot topic as well. So it was just quite great to see these vendors kind of developing their solutions in the way they did. There've been topics on bank connectivity, fraud and cybercrime, which is where I say NSNOX also appeared on, which was particularly good, FX risk management, bank account management. There's a whole host of other areas which, frankly, when you kind of, in one of the earlier questions you asked about, where do I go if I want to try and educate myself or just to find out what's going on? Well, this is another good venue, or I'm not kind of unplugging it, but frankly, even if I wasn't on there, I'll be wanting to listen to that, because first of all, you get to see the vendors kind of pitch their product in 7 minutes, so you don't have to give up a whole hour necessarily to hear what they have to say. Then you also get an opportunity to ask questions online. So, and if they don't answer the questions straight away, they'll commit to answer them offline, if you like. So, there's lots of reasons why it's quite a good avenue to take advantage of if you're looking at a particular area, whether it's cash pooling, FX risk management, cyber fraud, to see what's available out there.
Super cool. Are there any industries? So you said that there are certain industries and certain names that keep coming up. Are there any industries, or maybe not industries, are there any
Companies?
treasury topics or treasury areas that you wish you saw more of, or you haven't seen anything innovative come through yet where it is needed?
Yeah, I would say it comes down to, where are the pain points, right? I mean, it's a classic case of, yes, we'd like to see more of that, but we want to see more of something that actually works.
Okay.
So pain point for treasurers, and certainly for us, is KYC, know your customer.
You're not the first person to say that. We had an interview 2 days ago where we asked the exact same question. I'll go live before this. And the exact same answer came up. It was KYC.
And it's astonishing that we still have this challenge today, where I know there are solutions that exist out there, but I don't think they necessarily work to the degree that we've got this challenge within the fintech industry. It's not their fault per se, where, they have a really great solution, but underneath that solution, they're completely reliant on the bank or the banks. Because if it's cash pooling, or it's KYC, or bank account management, or even payments for that matter, there are some fintechs, like even the one that we use, when we make our payments, although we need a bank, it works really well because it's using Swift. So we don't necessarily need, we're not reliant on the bank in order to make sure that the payment is processed from our end, if that makes sense. And it's done very efficiently. With some of the other requirements like KYC, you can get a solution that says, oh yeah, we can help you with, managing your bank account mandates, and you can, do this, that, and the other within our system. But then you're still behest to the bank, because the bank may then say, but doesn't fit within our, requirements. You have to kind of submit this form, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. And of course, the fintech can't do anything about that. So you're kind of stuck then, or decided with the fintech, in what you can actually achieve. Even if you want it to be a bit more automated, there's only so much you can do, and then you're kind of not at mercy, but you're kind of reliant on what the banks, or which bank you happen to be dealing with. Cash flow forecasting, I have to mention that, because although I've seen a fair number of solutions, and I think this to be fair, it's really incumbent on the corporates to try and address some of the challenges we have. But as I said, I think early on, I am a firm believer that this next year with AI and what's happening with AI, for the first time, corporates will begin to see a really decent solution in addressing the cash flow forecasting challenges that we face so far. Whether it's with a third-party provider or just using AI within their companies to facilitate position they get to where they can use a fintech to then kind of find or complete the end part of that journey, I do see that at long last, that pain point that we've talked about for so long will start to crumble. I really believe that.
Exciting. So if there's any vendors out there that are interested in coming up with the next money-making product in Treasury, then they should focus on KYC as a solution and a really good cash flow forecasting solution, hopefully using AI, and then come on to the Treasury Dragons to try and sell it to Royston.
Absolutely. And not just me, hopefully all the other potential treasurers that might be interested in that solution.
Super cool.
But I mean, just to quickly mention, in terms of Treasury, there are a lot of solutions. You can kind of sign up. I mean, I say we've got 13 cloud-based solutions, but from a core Treasury perspective, we've got a Treasury management solution with Cooper, we've got our online trading solution with 360T, and you've got your bank confirmations using Finastra. So there's kind of three main ones that sort of typically get used regularly. But then you've got market data. So what I'm trying to illustrate here, I guess, is you can go through a long list of solutions and vendors that exist to provide what I'd call fundamental data processes that any treasury function requires. But in terms of what would be the next phase, what would be the next step? So one thing that I've kind of realized and looking at is having 13 cloud-based solutions is not brilliant in my view, because for the simple reason, I mean, they do the job, don't get me wrong, and it's great that we have them because they're certainly, they're necessary. But they're all separately connected to our network. So we have to, log into the web browser or whatever. The data cloud is becoming a much bigger proposition in my view. And I think we're seeing more and more companies beginning to talk about, certainly the fintechs, about how you can access multiple solutions through one, almost like a single sign-on scenario. And I do believe that's the way forward, because why shouldn't you be in a situation where you don't have to? And you can imagine how the banks, which I know it's a bit more kind of further away, but with the right technology, with the right, that level of security around it, could then also partner on these same platforms. That KYC issue kind of goes away in one instant.
Yeah, so the KYC one, that's not what the episode's meant to be about, but maybe I'd like your insight on this as well. So every time I hear that complaint about the KYC one, I'm like, well, why can't there just be one KYC form you fill in once a year, and then everyone gets access to, you get a specific QR code or a specific, you have a specific code on the KYC platform, and then everyone, all the banks or all the partners, is updated, is still valid for this year, and that's it. Well, that seems like the simple solution, but that's too simple almost.
No, I mean, why shouldn't it be? I mean, this is the point, isn't it? We need to dream, but we need to be inspired and look and ask those questions, because that's the other problem. I think for too long, in Treasury at least, we've kind of accepted or settled, if I can put it that way, for what's available. And I want to answer that point about the rationale behind why, and I know you know this, but there's 12,000 banks or thereabouts globally. And I'm afraid, although they collaborate, I mean, that's rather arguable in SWIFT, because each bank, or there are some banks that don't use the same kind of fields as well. But they're notorious for not collaborating when it comes to anything. When you try and sort of ask the question with KYC, why? I do agree there are regional challenges around regulatory requirements, so you can't really blame the banks for all of that. But there's no reason why a group of banks, and interestingly enough, they're beginning to do this with digital currency. So I can see, I guess there's an element like the age old, does it in my best interest, or, what's the benefit for me is, I guess, how the banks approach it.
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
No.
And but I do feel that that's an area they could definitely work on and improve.
So that's where the regulators need to step in then, right? If every single corporate is complaining about the same thing and the banks aren't doing it themselves due to inefficiencies in communication, that's the role of the regulator to come in and say, hey, no, look, we're going to establish a standardized KYC process that all banks in our region need to follow.
Agreed. And I know that's mostly corporate banks, but let's not forget that 70% of this generation, 18 to 30-year-olds, don't have a physical bank account. What that means is that why do they need to open a bank account when it's so much easier to go on and open an e-wallet? Now, I know that's not realistic for corporates, but I'm just making the point that in time...
That's true.
If this isn't...
I have physical bank accounts. I don't use them. I just use my e-wallet accounts.
Correct.
I have multiple, but I use all my e-wallet accounts. And banks, they just can't keep up. They don't offer the same services. Their user interfaces are just not as
and they're easy to open.
tech.
You can open them within 5 minutes or thereabouts.
Yeah, Face ID and it's done. And then I can do everything in the app. But I have a couple physical bank apps which aren't that bad actually. I could open them easily and everything like that and I use them. But then just I can't get my statements on the app.
Yeah.
I'm like, why can't I get my statements on the app? Or I can't do this kind of transfer on the app, or I can't do this on the app. You have to log into the website. I'm like, I just transfer my money into the other account and then do what I wanted to do there. It's as simple as that.
And so this is a very good point you raised, and this is where I kind of come from when I think of any challenge, whether it's specifically around treasury or personal. We're living in an age where there are alternatives and solutions to make life so much easier and simpler. So at some point, you kind of have to ask yourself, either if you're of my generation, do you continue to accept this state of affairs when you know there's a better way? But then you've got a new generation of treasurers coming to the workplace. Don't even ask that question. No. There's only one way. It's frictionless, efficient, speedy, etc. So
I don't know anything else. Whereas the older generations have seen worse.
That's what I meant about when, so those companies that didn't see the writing on the wall. I feel the same applies now again. If people or companies, banks, whatever they are, don't see what's happening around them, what's coming up, they could be in for a big surprise.
Yeah. Super interesting indeed. Royston, and then I had one last question for you on the Dragons. What's the mistake that all vendors make when they come on, or the most common mistake you see with vendors coming on? So they make this like a behind the scenes of the Treasury Dragons, like Royston Da Costa getting interviewed about what he has consistently seen vendors. And this is the clip that vendors, when they come on the Dragons in the future, are going to look at and say, hey, Royston, you said we should do this. Here we go. What is that? What is that tip?
Okay. This is a classic mistake. And frankly, this is sad to see. It happens not just with the vendors, but even with banks. It's an age-old concept, right? If you're trying to sell a product or service, first of all, ask your customer what they want.
Right, so I was expecting something super innovative.
Yeah, right.
And that no one would have heard.
No, it's not. It's simple, basic 101, Treasury 101. Ask the client what they want. But I tell you what, you'll split the audience 50-50 here, because let's say 50% say, oh, okay, maybe even less, but let's assume this 50-50. The 50 said, no, but we do that. Well, the next mistake, or in my view, that's made is when they get the answer, they automatically either put that answer make it fit within their solution. So what you get in response is, okay, you've asked for this. This is what we can give you. It's not answering the problem I've got. Or they make an assumption that's what you've asked. In other words, it's about communication. So And there are only a few vendors I've come across that have done this really well, really successfully, and banks for that matter, where they take the time, invest the time to first of all find out what you want. When you've told them what you want, they come back to you and say, if I've understood you correctly, I think this is what you've said. Or they will kind of question you and say, okay, specifically what are you trying to solve for? I think problem has been with the way general, I'm not a salesman, but I think generally with sales, it's a more case of if you say you want that orange to be pink or even blue, right, okay, I'll just write a check out, I'll paint it blue for you. Rather than say, why do you want that orange to be blue? What's the purpose? And only one vendor, or at least one person, I'll mention his embarrassing a bit.
So yeah,
Martin Bellin, an icon in the Treasury industry, is the only person that I've come across who had actually challenged us when we first came across his solution and said, but we want it done this way. And he said, why? And it's not that he was being confrontational. He actually genuinely wanted to understand the reason. And actually it was quite refreshing, because what that taught me personally was that it's more important about getting the end result than how you get there. It doesn't have to be the way you've always done it or the way you've done it in a particular way. If you get that result that you're looking for, what does it matter if you go route B versus route C? And that also shows understanding as well, understanding of your problem. And it's kind of a neat way of helping you, because at the end of the day, every solution is different, obviously. But the value you can get out of solving the problem, that pain point, it's insurmountable, actually. It does get a lot of goodwill out of the corporate, as it did with us, trust, relation building. And, this works equally well with banks. But unfortunately, and I know we're not talking about banks here, but just to kind of relate my comment there, quite often, banks are, let's say, instructed or whatever to sell a product. And, sometimes you can't lose, I think, not only that goodwill potentially from the customer, because how's that solving the pain point I've been telling you about, whether it's a KYC or payment or something else? And you're kind of like, well, I don't like to talk about that, so we'll just put that to one side. But I've got this amazing product. Yeah, but that's not what I'm concerned about at the moment. And I say, coming back to the vendor, this is where I say, listen more to what treasurers are asking for, or be bold and ask them what it is they want.
So I remember doing a project management training in my early parts of my career, and the trainer gave a very great example inside the workshop of how you think you've communicated what you're doing properly, but in reality, people perceive things very differently. And the exercise he made us do was, he split us into 4 groups and 4 different tables, 5, 6 people on each group. And he said, he gave us all a piece of paper, and he said, okay, write down all the words that you associate with trust to each group. Okay, so we all wrote down, okay, trust means communication, trust means this, trust means this, trust means this, right? And so he gave us all 10 minutes to do that or whatever. And then he wrote up, he made a square on his flip chart, and he said to each table. And so while we were doing it, he also said, don't listen to each other's, don't shout it too loud, all that kind of stuff. He wrote out, he got each table to write out all the words that we associated with trust. So in each square, and trust means communication, trust means this, trust means this, trust means this. Across the 4 squares, there was not a single word that was common.
Wow.
And there's about 50 words on that board.
Wow.
Not a single word was common.
That's incredible.
And we were amazed. We were absolutely amazed. I mean, before he started writing, he said, how many do you think will be in common? And we thought, oh, come on, like 40% at least.
Yeah.
Right? And he said 0. And he said, every time we do this exercise, maybe 1 comes up. Sometimes, but in reality, every single time the same thing happens. And the lesson from that was, just because you think you've communicated, hey, I want trust, I want to establish trust, for example, doesn't mean that the other person's definition of trust is your definition of trust. Right. So likewise, just because you say, hey, I want this, doesn't mean that the other person understands what this really is.
Correct.
And you need to say back to the person, hey, so I understand that you want this, 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 which means this, 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 this. It goes, well, no, not quite that. I actually want this and I actually meant this. And so that level of just what you said right there, relating back, hey, this is what I understand that you want.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're on the same page about understanding what cash flow forecasting tool is. So, okay, why do you want a cash flow forecasting tool? What's missing in your current cash flow forecasting tool? What is it that you're actually trying to achieve from a cash flow forecasting tool that is solving the pain point in your business? What is the pain point that you see day to day? Okay, why is a cash flow forecasting tool the one that's actually going to get you there? What's missing in your current one that's stopping you from getting there? It was a very powerful lesson. It was years and years and years ago, and it really sticks with me to this day because I was so gobsmacked that not a single word was the same.
It is quite incredible. But that's, again, like you said, a very powerful analogy and example of how it holds true. But yeah, and it's not, as you say, it's not rocket science. It's just a kind of basic sales 101, I would imagine. But yeah.
And, Royston, thank you so much for coming on the show. Super informative discussion. Is there anything that you'd like to add on any of the topics that we've discussed that perhaps we didn't give you the opportunity to say? Or
yeah, well, do you know what? I wasn't going to say. We didn't really talk about ESG. And I get that's not one of those topics that appears at the top of everyone's, certainly treasurer's list. But I do believe it's a huge topic for obvious reasons. I know we haven't got enough time to cover all of those components, but at the very least, I come back to this next generation of treasurers that's in the workplace and going to kind of slowly but surely move forward. It's what they care about most. And rightly so. Rightly so. I mean, apart from the EBIT and the S and the G, there's also now a new statistics I've heard, which is by 2030, the drinking water globally is going to reduce by 40%, is what I picked up on this conference recently. So, whichever way you look in terms of the environment, we need to take more accountability for it. And we can, not just in terms of individuals, but as treasurers, by trying to make sure that we look at sustainable products. But the social bit is a game changer because, particularly since the pandemic, and I grew up in an era where we weren't able to work remotely and we weren't able to have that work-life balance. But we all know today's generation will not tolerate anything less than that, which is good. I'm a big fan of that. But it's not just that. It's also about the diversity and inclusiveness that brings along with it. Unfortunately, in my view, Treasury has never been a big kind of proponent of, and I'll give you an example. So very proud that Ferguson do a fair bit of training around this area. They've had menopause training, we've had training about unconscious bias, we've mental health. It's really trying to capture, make sure all groups are included. But it's important. It's important because particularly as we look at today's world, especially since the pandemic, we cannot afford to ignore that, these are important factors and potential requirements that people are looking for. But also, I believe it adds, in many respects, to productivity and, again, talking about balanced work-life, also mental health. So, yeah, and then governance, clearly, that, to me, has always been the catalyst for trying to make sure that we get these very positive changes into the workplace much faster. But that's the only thing I want to quickly add.
No, that's great. We've done a few episodes on ESG if people are interested to listen more. We did one with Etienne Chalamage where we really talked about can Treasury have a real ESG impact and how you go about that. That was episode 128. We had Alex from Fitch Ratings.
Oh, yes.
Director of Fitch Ratings who talked about the Fitch ESG score.
Yep.
And how that relates to treasurers and whatnot as well. And we had Leanne Perkins talk a lot about diversity in the workplace and whatnot as well. So we have done quite a few episodes on it, but happy to have you on again in the future to talk about it more, and specifically around that whole thing about how does Treasury really play its part in the ESG world as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do that. Again, I have views about it. I don't know. I have seen enough of how much. Yeah, no, sure. I think I can talk to it about what I see Treasury doing. And I was trying to say within Ferguson, it's mostly from a corporate perspective because, I mean, within certainly the UK, I'm the only person in Treasury, but there's there's a fair bit of information. In fact, I'm going to be doing a panel session with Bank of America on ESG. And one of their guys, I forget his surname, Craig's on there from Fitch. So they seem
Nice.
like quite a
No, 100%. Royston, appreciate you a lot. Thank you so much for coming on the show.